All right, cool. So here we have, it's given us texture map. This isn't actually the diffuse map, but it looks pretty good. And this is basically what our actual diffuse map will look like. But let's close that out, and I'll just go into Photoshop and just show you what we just created and how I would take this and essentially make a texture out of it rather than the traditional way of using UVW maps and figuring out what's what, and doing it that way is really very time consuming. It's very difficult, and I find this is much easier. Anyways, let's go back to our texture. So this is texture. I'm just going to set this to PNGs for a second because I have some other stuff there. There it is. That's what we had created. Nice, huh? So what I do is basically it's given me the texture map for me, and at this point I don't really have to do anything. But what I'd like to do is now I can just focus on doing stuff like adding details. So um, here I can really just focus on just painting. Like if I want to make some cracked windows, I can just paint some cracked windows in here. If I just want to do cracks in the walls, I can do cracks in the wall. I can do all types of stuff. And the point is, I didn't have to do anything extra. This was all just I already did all this, and now I'm kind of using the fruits of my labor. But this is all based on a UVW map that we had created for our low poly model. So you can see how you know everything is arranged in a way so I can figure everything out. And that's it. You can paint away, and if that's what you want to do. Um, But I usually actually, rather than just taking it with just this straight up color and painting it from scratch, what I'll do is I'll actually create one with a little bit of lighting and a little bit of shadows, just because I'm going to do that when I paint it in Photoshop anyways. So why not, have the computer do it for me, some of it anyways. So let me show you how that's done. We're going to use the same methodology pretty much as we did, except this time with instead of a skylight, let's remove that. Baked lighting, the way it works is in video games, let's say you have a game, you don't want to have to create lights for every single object just to get those shadows the way you want them to, because it's extremely intensive on the programs. So what you want to do is just have maybe one light that follows the character or doesn't, and cast shadows for the character, and maybe cast general big shadows on all the objects, something like that. But if you're talking about this building, for example, I want it to have certain shadows and under the windows, maybe I want to have some very specific shadows, but I don't want to have to put a light to do that. I can have just the texture do that, and that's what I'm going to show you here. So we got rid of our skylight, but now instead what we're going to be adding, and I'm actually, to make this easier, I'm going to go ahead and close this out for a second, and let me hide my high poly model just because it is going to be a little bit intense. Oh, and by the way, what you're seeing is, remember we did that target map slot? It's going to basically give you this. Basically, it looks like, oh, hey, the texture map is on it. Well, it's not really, because if I hit render, you'll see it's actually not there. So it shows it in the viewport, but it actually it's not there. So I have to add that. if I want to, I'd have to add it to my diffuse map. But moving on, let's put in some lighting. So there's our, you can do whatever spotlights if you want. For this example, I'm just gonna make a quick Omni. Um, just Omni is just a really quick way for me to do some lighting. I don't have to do too much work, and that's why I'm doing it. But if I had more time, I would definitely use the spotlights, maybe some direct lights, whatever, and probably have multiple lights, not just one. Um, but for our purposes, I'm just going to go ahead and give it just this one light for now. And why not give it a color? Maybe, I don't know, green, maybe a little bit of green there. Well, it's a bit much, but and also just make sure shadows is on. We always want to have shadows for our baked lighting. Just looks cooler, right? So there, you can see it's gonna have this cool, these cool shadows, and this is gonna be straight directly in the diffuse map, so we won't have to do any of these details for that. So let me show you how it's done. And you can have as much lighting as you want. You can play around with that lighting and get it just the way you want it, but for our purposes, just that one light is going to do. So we'll go back to our projection, render to texture, and essentially everything remains the same. The only difference, and I'm actually gonna, yeah, I'll change the name of this just because I want this to be, I want to keep the other one as well. So maybe I'll just call this baked diffuse map. I don't know. But the important thing is right here. Remember where we said selected lighting and shadows was off? In this case, we actually want them on. And that's what it does. It'll basically calculate that lighting and that shadow as well. So just hit render. Oh, made a mistake. I forgot. You want to make sure you unhide your high poly model. Whoops, I had hidden it, but you got to make sure the high poly model is in the scene when you do this, because otherwise it's creating a projection of air, which is not fun. Okay, gonna let it do its thing, and then we'll come back and we'll take a look at everything put together: normal map, diffuse map, and all that good stuff.